cherish her is our fervent call. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fire. We reached these shores from distant lands. We came with hungry hearts and hands. Some came by force and some by will, to the auction block and the darkened mill. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fire. We died in your fields and your factories, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees, an old coat hanger in a room somewhere, a trail of tears, an electric chair. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fire. And our great responsibility to be guardians of our liberty, till tyrants bend to the people's dreams, and justice rolls like a mighty stream. Arise, arise, I see the future in your eyes. To a more perfect union we aspire, and lift our voices from the fire. We lift our voices from the fire. Hey, thank you and welcome to Community Church. It's so wonderful to see a mess of people here in the auditorium in spite of our elevator issues, and we apologize that it'll be about 10 days without elevator, and we're so sorry, but you came anyway, because this is just a wonderful event and performer that we've had so many times. Whenever we hear that he's going to be anywhere near, we drop everything and want to hear David. Just a couple of quick announcements. We have really great schedule of things happening in April and May. I want to point out the concerts that are happening. This next Tuesday is a group called Kulomba. There are 5 voices that do world music in a sort of classical style, but traditional choral music from several different countries. We also have later this month, April 19th, Ketu Oladua, who is a poet with jazz accompaniment, and he was on death row in Massachusetts till it was found out that he was not guilty of the crime. This was 40 years ago, and he's since moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana, where he lives, and he's doing a tour in this area. Ketu Oladua. Let me jump to May, where we have Maura Smiley, another remarkable vocalist, and we have Betsy Rose, a legendary Boston performer before we lost her to Berkeley, California, and she's coming back for a couple of concerts in this area. And finally, May 27th is Dean Stevens turns 70, and we have a benefit for Community Church on that night. It's Friday, May 24th. We have tons of great speakers. Dennis Kucinich is going to be with us virtually, of course, on April 10th. And a bunch of other ones that'll be in our new newsletter that comes out next week. We have a newsletters, but it's about stuff that already happened, which is pretty impressive too. Thank you for joining us. I'd love to tell you more about Community Church and about our rich history and about our remarkable archives and things that we've lived through over the years as a radical speaker series doing good trouble in the city of Boston, in the state of Massachusetts, in the country of the United States, and the planet Earth. Jimmy Tingle was going to be here Monday night, but it was canceled. And the reason is that we have several senior members that we're going to have a dinner in their honor, and they have worse issues with stairs than any of us do here, because we all made it up the stairs, and we congratulate you for that. Okay, I've been loquacious enough, haven't I? I wanted to say that that first song is written by Jean Rowe. I love her music, especially that song. It's sort of an alternative national anthem. Maybe it'll be played at baseball games someday. I doubt it, but maybe it'll just replace Sweet Caroline in the 8th inning. That'll be fine with me if it's just that. Folks, you know him already, and I don't need to say anything else. David Rovics.
This is lovely. Let's see. Pick. Several of them.
Now I get to open a beer.
Well, I just happen to have this song open. It's a song about why we really need better rent control in the city of Boston. But in disguise, it's about the history of the Highland clearances in Scotland. But it's actually about the current day. Once upon a century, people lived above this glen. There were 50 houses here with parents and their children. But someone said they owned what those for generations had called their homes across the Scottish nation. Allotments kept on shrinking while the rent would only rise. One by one the broken crofters left the open skies, the frozen shores of Nova Scotia in a far-off colony, or somewhere else across the sea. Once upon a century, from the ways of old, from something like the golden rule to the rule of gold, it's just the logic of the market. Supply and demand says to drive the people from the land. Instead of eerie silence reverberating all around, among the gardeners and shepherds, you would hear the sound of the pipes and drums and choirs, of the songs that would be sung, and the stories that were told in the Gaelic tongue. Once upon a century, you'd never think it could to turn into a field what had been a neighborhood. Once there were the promises of loyalty or clan, and then there was just profit if you can. If we travel back to a different time and space, it was possible for most to afford to live someplace, but it's the logic of the market, each investor's conviction. More money is just grounds for an eviction. Once upon a century, they cleared the highlands for the sheep. Most folks did not resist as the rent became too steep. They packed their things and moved, scattered far and near. You'd never know that they once were here. Just for the whims of capital, the biggest profits for the banks. You fight a war for empire, and clearance is your thanks. From the crofts of Scotland to the sidewalks of LA, if anything has changed, who can say? Once upon a century, people lived above this glen. There were 50 houses here with parents and their children. She was looking for a place to have a baby, but with the hospitals destroyed, she headed south in a donkey cart to give birth to her little boy. She wasn't lying by a manger, no hay beneath her on the ground. She couldn't hear her newborn's cries, with the bombs exploding all around. There's baby Jesus lying in the rubble, a hungry little bag of skin and bones, with his mother Mary broken there beside him, in the place that they were calling a safe zone. Without a blanket, without a drop of water, nothing between them and the sky. Wise men from the east tried to come to see him, but they're trapped at the crossing in Sinai. There's no fuel for the water pumps, only for the drones always buzzing overhead, reminding every child there beneath them, the next moment it could be your mama dead. There's baby Jesus lying in the rubble, a hungry little bag of skin and bones, with his mother Mary broken there beside him, in the place that they were calling a safe zone. He's the Son of God, said the angel, as the babe began to shiver from the cold. There was a twinkle in his eye for a moment, before the rigor mortis took hold. This prophet who was born to save our species, this child who was the only son of all the tens of thousands killed so far. Now we can add another one. There's baby Jesus lying in the rubble, a hungry little bag of skin and bones, with his mother Mary broken there beside him, in the place that they were calling a safe zone. In the place that they were calling a safe zone. In the place that they were calling a safe zone. There's so many efforts to resist and to try to do something about this ongoing genocide unfolding. And this is a song about the people who are doing the most, who have my deepest respect and admiration. Half the world's trade passes by here. So much of it goes through Tel Aviv. Meanwhile, in the port of Gaza, no ships can arrive and not a boat can leave. While every day hundreds are dying beneath the rain of missiles fired from the air. Millions of starving Palestinians on the run and being slaughtered everywhere. No safe place in the Gaza Strip. No armies coming to defend. While all over the planet, people are asking, when will this savage bombing end? How many more thousands of children can be killed while we stand by? How can we just live our lives while we watch the babies die? Shukran jazilan to the Houthi army standing for the conscience of us all. When they say no business as usual, while the bombs continue to fall. For a country that doesn't have an air force, they're painting black, red, green, and white on the helicopters that they use to board the ships to show their cause is right. The president says this terrorism must stop right away, to which the Houthis respond, yes, that's exactly what we are trying to say. Shukran jazilan to the Houthi army standing for the conscience of us all. When they say no business as usual, while the bombs continue to fall. Ships going all the way around Africa to avoid the Houthi net. If Israel wants trading partners, now they might be just a little harder to get. We can blockade ports all over, north, south, east, and west. But the Houthi army are the ones who are no doubt blocking the traffic the best. Shukran jazilan to the Houthi army standing for the conscience of us all. When they say no business as usual, while the bombs continue to fall. Obviously, you're all a bunch of terrorists sympathizing anti-Semites. You haven't walked out yet. That's evidence. If you are a fan of democracy, if you have a problem with state theocracy, if you're having issues with minority rule or with propaganda they teach your kids in school, you don't like invading armies bent on thievery, if you think it's wrong to steal someone else's country, there's just one explanation, though it may be getting trite. You must be an anti-Semite. You must be an anti-Semite. They're all sing-alongs, by the way. If you don't like the idea of shooting mortar rounds at kids, it must be because you just don't like the Yids. Israel bombs hospitals, if you heard that on the news. It must be because that network doesn't like the Jews. All those UN agencies crying genocide secretly still blame us for the way that Jesus died. There's just one explanation we keep within our sights. You must be an anti-Semite. You must be an anti-Semite. If you think free speech is a really good thing, if you fear the future that censorship may bring, if you think Mark Zuckerberg is a pawn of the CIA, if you don't believe whatever the Western leaders say, if you march and chant from the river to the sea, if you say you'll keep fighting until Palestine is free, there's just one explanation, right there in black and white. You must be an anti-Semite. You must be an anti-Semite. If you're not a fan of home demolitions, if you've got some kind of problem with the Zionist position, it can't be that you care about humanity. It can't be that you just want some sanity. If you don't like the slaughter, you'd better just stand by. Don't speak out or else we'll all know the reason why. There's just one explanation, the one from the far right. You must be an anti-Semite. You must be an anti-Semite. I'll do a poem. Where did all these terrorists come from? I heard Gallant and Austin talking to the press, looking strong for the cameras. How could they do less? With all that's arrayed against them, from the Houthi army in Sana'a, from the shores of Lebanon to the fighters in Gaza, thousands and thousands of terrorists everywhere. Terrorists taking hostages and never fighting fair, dying in such numbers and then fighting back some more after all of our efforts with war after war after war. Where do these terrorists come from? What is it that makes them tick? Is there something in the water that makes them a bit thick? Maybe it's the weather that gets them all so mad. Perhaps it's their schooling and the childhoods they had, raised to rage and fight, to praise the martyrs past, indoctrinated with ideas like fighting to the last. Or it could be just that Disney is too much to tolerate, and to look at Donald Duck just fills them up with hate. Maybe they're all homophobes who don't like our gay bars. They don't like us because we drink too much and have adult film stars. So many bigoted people who think we're underdressed, rebelling against the infidel bikinis of the West. Maybe they don't like our music. Maybe they just want to kill. Maybe they're brainwashed by their imams and they're following God's will. Maybe they like the Russians and they're Putin's tools. Or maybe they just believe in Sharia rule. Maybe they don't like freedom and offensive French cartoons. Maybe they don't like that story about the red balloon. Maybe they fear the future. They reject modernity. They want to keep their people in a feudal society. Perhaps they don't like HBO, or it could be CNN. Maybe they're afraid it could liberate their women. Maybe it's our sex shops or the drugs we've legalized. Maybe that's the reason why the West is so despised. It could be that they woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Perhaps they read Mein Kampf and got ideas in their head. Perhaps they're anti-Semites. They don't like the Jews. Who knows where they got their violent views? Maybe they're still resentful since the Inquisition. Maybe they want to control the world, the jihadi mission. Or perhaps they just have issues anyone could understand, like invaders stole and occupied their land. I was thinking about historical events in the wake of the ongoing genocide that's began in earnest in October. I guess, like they say in Russia and Ukraine, the full-scale war. This is like the full-scale genocide, right? And except we can kick all the Russians out of the sporting events, but not the Israelis. Certainly not the Americans. Minnesota had a famine. Minnesota had a ghetto uprising and a famine. He heard that they were on their way when the settlers came. Little Crow knew that nothing now would ever be the same. The treaties he agreed to signed under duress. He watched as the land of the Indians was less and less and less. His people were left with a patch only 20 miles wide. A little bit of land by the Mississippi riverside. A little bit of land with a very uncertain fate once this place called Minnesota became a state. Little Crow went all the way to Washington, D.C., where he appealed his people's case to the highest authority. Then they took away half the land allotted for his kin, and then even that little patch saw more settlers moving in. Little Crow watched them hunting and logging all the trees. He watched his people growing hungry. He watched the children freeze when their meager crops failed. He went in search of aid from the Indian agents who had grown rich from the money that they'd made. What should have fed the people lined their pockets instead. Lincoln sent an investigator, and that's just what he said. The standard was corruption, treaties made to be broken, along with comforting words duplicitously spoken. Little Crow told his people, words bitter on his tongue. The agent has said his people could eat grass and their own dung. Peaceful coexistence could clearly last no more. He gathered up an army and set out to go to war. His warriors raided the stores of food that should have been theirs. They took guns and ammunition, put soldiers in their crosshairs. They won one battle after another, drove all the settlers out until divisions heading south were given a new route. Little Crow's uprising was finally suppressed, and the Indians of Minnesota were sent far off to the west. Whether part of the uprising to the authorities, it didn't matter, and they died of famine and disease. Little Crow was killed picking berries with his son, shot down by a settler out hunting with his shotgun. For handing in his scalp, a hunter made a dandy sum, and his bones were displayed in a museum. Little Crow was a leader, and it seems to me he made decisions when every option was impossibility. He had the choice to starve and die on what was left of the land, but he decided it was time to take a stand. They were on their way, and when the settlers came, Little Crow knew that nothing now would ever be the same. So I have a friend in, she's fine, she's fine. No, she's fine. We like her harmonies. But she can run around, hang out on the stage too. Come on. My 2-year-old used to change her socks. She used to, when my 18-year-old was 2, she would sit on the stage and take her socks off and put them back on. And other amazing feats like that. And it was just completely diffused any kind of creative tension I was trying to, get going there. Really was so completely and thoroughly upstaged by her socks. And she never noticed the audience was out there. She'd just do things like that, And then she'd actually go get in I had a guitar case that was a soft case, a lot like that one I'm using now, and she'd get in it and take a nap. And it was just the right size to cuddle up in a little, and it's furry in the inside, Oh yeah. I have a friend in Virginia who, like so many people since October, I think, so many people I know, so many people people have been just trying to figure out what they can possibly do to have any kind of a positive contribution to this horrendous situation. And those of you here who are old enough to remember the Vietnam War also remember the same feeling waking up every day knowing that our government had just massacred hundreds of people in the past 24 hours and was going to do it in the next 24 hours, largely through aerial bombardment. And, same kind of thing. People were waking up every morning trying to figure out what the hell can I possibly do. And this is what my friend Al did. Gather round, I'll tell a story about a man I know, what he did across the ocean half a century ago. Death was raining from the skies all over Vietnam. Al and Clyde decided they had to try to stop the bombs. These two young men signed up to join the merchant marine, horrified by what they heard along with what they'd seen. They began to have discussions, they found a common goal. They'd join the crew of the Columbia Eagle, and then they'd take control. The ship was full of napalm, heading across the sea to be loaded onto planes and be dropped upon the country to burn the skin off people beneath it. At the time, they vowed to break the law to prevent a greater crime. They thought they'd spend their lives in prison, or more likely they would die. But Clyde and Al agreed that at least they had to try to sail to Cambodia with all the napalm as well, where it might remain forever, the bombs that never fell. They carried out their plan, and they didn't slip. Just two guns between them, but soon they ran the ship. They brought it to neutral waters by Sihanoukville, that these bombs might never be sent to maim and kill. But that's not how it ended. The next thing that we knew, Sihanouk was overthrown. There was a military coup. Clyde McKay died in the jungle, and with so many of his peers in a California prison, Al Gladkowski spent 8 years. The ship was not off course by much more than a bit. The future of the folly, perhaps they didn't change it. But while the blood was flowing and most people spent their days maybe marching in the streets or just joining the rat race, there are those among us who can say they really tried, who did everything they possibly could to stop the fratricide. If you see a big white beard on the Central Eastern shore, he might be a mutineer who tried to stop the war. Gather round, I'll tell a story about a man I know, what he did across the ocean half a century ago. Well, I think one of the very biggest things that it's really holding back this society is social media. And the main problem with social media is that it's run by billionaires who have algorithms that are designed to keep us all fighting each other and to make sure that the working class is never able to effectively organize because we're all too busy arguing about who said what on Twitter 15 years ago, or who's more oppressed than somebody else. And it's a really sad divided and conquered situation where most of the organizers and artists in this country I know can't actually do anything in public without having to deal with a deluge of inaccurate and often fanciful and completely ridiculous allegations based on some interpretation of some use of a word on Twitter and some 200 character communication from a decade ago. I mean, this is the kind of political discourse that is now normal in this country. Luckily, it's not a global phenomenon, but unfortunately, it is a widespread phenomenon in the most powerful country on earth, which is really discouraging. And this is a song I wrote about it, the phenomenon in general, before. I guess maybe Facebook already existed, but it hadn't started sucking so much yet, and Twitter didn't even exist yet. It's called "I'm a Better Anarchist Than You." I don't drive a car because they run on gas, but if I did, it'd run on biomass. I ride a bike, or sometimes a skateboard, so piss off all you drivers and your yuppie hordes sitting all day in the traffic queues. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't eat meat, I just live on moldy chives or the donuts that I found in last week's dumpster dives. Look at you people in that restaurant, I think you are so sad when you could have been eating bagels like the ones that I just had. I think it is a shame all the bourgeois things you do. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't wear leather and I like my clothes in black, and I made a really cool hammock from a moldy coffee sack. I like to hop on freight trains, I think that is so cool. It's so much funner doing this than being stuck in school. I can't believe you're wearing those brand new shiny shoes. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't have sex and there will be no sequel because heterosexual relationships are inherently unequal. I'll just keep on moshing to anti-flag and crass until there are no differences in gender, race, or class. All you brainwashed breeders, you just haven't got a clue. I'm a better anarchist than you. I don't believe in leaders, I think consensus is the key. I don't believe in stupid notions like representative democracy. Whether or not it works, I know it is the case that only direct action can save the human race. So when I see you in your voting booth, then I know it's true. I'm a better anarchist than you. I am not a pacifist. I like throwing bricks, and when the cops have caught me and I've taken a few licks, I always feel lucky if I get a bloody nose because I feel so militant and everybody knows. By the time the riot is all through, I'm a better anarchist than you. I'm a better anarchist than you. Did you ever notice that whether the United States is involved in a war or not, as long as somebody else is having a war out there in the world, whether the people that the U.S. likes or not, whether there's anybody involved that the U.S. is a fan of or not officially, whoever wins the war or whoever loses the war is going to import a lot of stuff from the United States afterwards. This was true of all the countries that participated in the Second World War in a massive way and made the U.S. One of the main industrial giant in the world for 20 years or so afterwards, till other countries could rebuild. In the wake of the Vietnam War, we had a recession, which just because we weren't spending so much money on the war anymore, and I find it a very interesting coincidence, and of course it's a coincidence because we know that billionaires don't collude with each other to conspire and do things for their own benefit. That would be anybody who thinks such things as a conspiracy theorist. And anti-Semitic, wearing you got a tinfoil hat, you're anti-Semitic, you're probably a Nazi. Yeah, so we won't even talk about those crazy conspiracy theories, but it's an interesting coincidence that the United States happens to produce all of the main commodities that Russia exports. Isn't that interesting? Tanks were rolling into Ukraine. The globe was horrified. There were calls for negotiations to heal this divide. Others called for sending missiles, armored trucks, and fighter planes, and for sanctioning the Russians to block their shipping lanes. As the slaughter went on, it did not take long at all for the war and the sanctions' first victims to fall. As the price of food skyrocketed, no fertilizer for the soil, and a doubling price of oil. But fear not, world, as long as you can pay. You can buy all the things you need from the USA. By a freak coincidence, we've got these purple fields of grain, growing lots of corn and wheat as long as we get rain in the commodity markets. prices have quintupled. Good time to tighten our belts and get extra fit and supple. Don't know about that pipeline, who made it explode. But now that you've lost your main source from where the gas once flowed, for 5 times the price, we've got all of it you need and a whole lot of corporate greed. Fear not, world, as long as you can pay. You can buy all the things you need from the USA. We've got your weapons too, in case you fear your neighbors, or the Russians or the Chinese start rattling their sabers. You might as well be ready for when that time arrives. You'll want to stock your Air Force up with these F-35s. And if your country gets destroyed in the process of resistance, as you're picking up the broken pieces, if you need assistance, we can sell you steel, glass, lumber, and concrete in victory or defeat. Fear not, world, as long as you can pay. You can buy all the things you need from the USA. Fear not, world, as long as you can pay. You can buy all the things you need from the USA. Well, this is a song about solidarity of the kind that I know a lot of people, millions and millions of people, who would love to be able to exhibit right now. There are it's interesting. In Yemen, ever since I wrote that song that I kind of butchered accidentally this evening in terms of the chords, but in Yemen, there's I've been in touch with thousands of people since writing that song, and in the media they talk about how the Ansar Allah, otherwise known as the Houthis, don't represent all that many Yemenis. And I don't know whether that's true or not, but I know that the cause that they stand for and are fighting for is extremely popular in Yemen, as evidenced by the fact that the actual half the population of the place turns out in the streets. If you've not seen the aerial footage of the protests they have in Yemen, there's actual plain visual evidence of the popularity of the cause, and there are thousands and thousands and thousands of young folks who are pretty much begging for somebody to open up a land corridor to Gaza, which would of course mean going through Egypt, which is very unlikely to happen. But if it happened, it wouldn't be the first time that such actions were taken by people dedicated to fighting against injustice by any means necessary. My name is John Riley. I'll have your ear only a while. I left my dear home in Ireland. It was death, starvation, or exile. When I got to America, it was my duty to go, enter the army and slog across Texas to join in the war against Mexico. And it was there in the pueblos and hillsides that I saw the mistake I had made. Part of a conquering army with the morals of a bayonet blade. And there amidst all these poor dying Catholics, screaming children, the burning stench of it all, myself and 200 Irishmen decided to rise to the call. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied, so we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We marched neath the green flag of St. Patrick emblazoned with Erin Gulbra. right with the harp and the shamrock and the veritad publica. Just 50 years after Wolf Tone, 5,000 miles away, the Yanks called us a legion of strangers, and they can talk as they may. But from Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We fought them in 5 major battles. Churubusco was the last. Overwhelmed by the cannons from Boston, we fell after each mortar blast. Most of us died on that hillside in the service of the Mexican state. So far from our occupied homeland, we were heroes and victims of fate. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. From Dublin City to San Diego, we witnessed freedom denied. So we formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. We formed the St. Patrick Battalion, and we fought on the Mexican side. Do one more and we'll take a little intermission, and then I will do it all over again with entirely different songs, which is otherwise known as the second set. The second set will be coming. I usually find if I don't mention that at least twice, then somebody's going to ask me, are you going to do another set? So just so you know, there's going to be another set, by the way. I'm going to do another set. I went to play on the playground to do things I like so much. Run with my friends, play make-believe, swing on the swings and such. But this morning I went to the playground and bullies were guarding the swings. They knocked over the slide, dumped out the sandbox, took away all of our things. This playground is run by bullies, and they're all so big and mean. But this playground was made for all of us, and we're gonna change this scene. Well, all of us were scared of the bullies. They were so big and we were so small. Till somebody said if we organized, we could be 10 feet tall. We stood on each other's shoulders, put blankets over our heads. We looked like monsters and we roared like lions, and those bullies ran home and hid under their beds. This playground was run by bullies, and they're all so big and mean. But this playground was made for all of us, and we're gonna change this scene. Well, we got that playground back, but then we looked across the street, saw the sewage plant belching out smoke, poisoning the ground under our feet. It's giving us all asthma, and the hour is getting late. So we marched across the way, and we blocked that factory gate. 'Cause this world is run by bullies, and they're all so big and mean. But this world was made for all of us, and we're gonna change this scene. This world is run by bullies, and they're all so big and mean. But this world was made for all of us, and we're gonna change this scene.
Thank you, folks. David Rovics, thank you. Take a short break, during which we tell you that we have a bunch of food that came in the door. Thank you, Sandra Harris, our president, and John Harris. And we also have a few beers left and some other liquid refreshment. There's also a table full of wares from Olive Branch Fair Trade, Martha's Vineyard, all Palestine goods. We also have a bunch of Central American stuff around. We also have fresh roasted coffee from El Salvador by the pound, beans, and a bunch of other stuff, tons of books. If you see one you like, we'll tell you if it's for sale or not. We inherited a mountain of books from Bob Datilio. So thanks, enjoy the interval, and we'll be back for more David. Oh yeah.
taught some to Russian when you were there, and we can get them all out.
How was that?
Yeah, it was really, really nice. All over the place. It was funny, they wanted us to interact with all the people from Latin America. They set us up in a hotel with all the Kurds. So we were hanging out with all the housemates and Syrians. Because we're from the Americas, they want to get all the Americans to rap and stuff like that.
My comment was more mundane. I love your song about John Riley. Is that a true story?
There's statues about it in Mexico.
Yeah,
It's pretty cool.
Well, I should know that story because I'm from Irish background. I joined your ukulele group. I just learned to play ukulele
basically order to dismiss. So now it's going to trial in the next few months. They're being charged with, it's like an obscure law from the 40s that was used to prosecute people for taking money from the Nazis. And it's only been used like 3 or 4 times. And it's supposed to, they're arguing that it has to be content neutral speech, which means that it doesn't matter what they were saying, it's that they were being paid to say. So the argument that the lawyers use is like, for example, if they were making videos and giving speeches about like Russian cuisine, you know, if they were being paid by the Russians, they are arguing that means that they
Okay. As people come in and settle themselves, I want to tell you about a couple of things that I forgot. Next Saturday, really wonderful event, the music of Joni Mitchell. It'll be Berkeley students and Berkeley alumni, and yours truly and a couple of musician friends who play here at Community Church. It's a benefit for Doctors Without Borders Gaza Relief. And that's next Saturday, April 6th, not tomorrow, but in a week from tomorrow. 7 p.m., the music of Joni Mitchell. All songs by Joni Mitchell, followed by a song by each one of these different songwriters. Also want to tell you that we have the rough draft of the new newsletter, and I want to read a few names of people who are joining us. Dennis Kucinich, Jill Stein, Rabbi Shoshana Meira Friedman, three wonderful friends of ours who are survivors of the prison industrial complex, Lee Underwood, Calvin Airy, and Don Wright. Two of them are members of our church, and Don is a friend from Western Mass. Jenny Stevens, professor at Northeastern, talking about climate justice and transformative economic change. May Day, John Proctor from the Boston Labor Solidarity Committee. A whole Sunday morning of short films by new immigrants to Boston. It's called New Immigrant and Refugee Visions. Morris Smiley and Shelter Music. This is a huge one. In fact, we're already almost sold out. His name is Adam Ezra. He's a very popular leader of an indie band out of Boston, plays all the time all over New England. Betsy Rose, I mentioned May 18th. All kinds of great stuff. Every other Saturday we have a peña. Peña is a Latin American style open mic, and it's fueled by Encuentro Cinco, which used to be a venue here in Boston that is now part of Community Church, and we are so happy to have inherited their human resources, which inhabit and populate our board of directors, and who put on this wonderful every second Saturday peña, Latin American style open mic. You don't have to be from Latin America. You can get up here and sing a song, or you can get on your soapbox and tell us whatever you want to tell us, or read your poem, whatever. Community Church Boston, a rich resource for the movement. We're here. Thank you. And we're so glad that you're with us and that we get to host David Rovics once more. Thanks, David.
La Peña. When I was around 24, 25 years ago, I was spending a lot of time in Hamburg, Germany. And Germany, like Sweden and some other countries, has a very large population. I mean, large is all relative, but large, hundreds of thousands of Chilean refugees in those countries, and Hamburg is home to so many Chileans. And at the time that I was spending a lot of time in Hamburg, most of those Chileans were middle-aged or younger, and were extremely active. They were the backbone of the left in Hamburg, and they made the best food as well, and had the best open mics, and it was and so I knew a lot of Chilean German couples, which is a fascinating combination of cultures to marry. And one of the Germans would tell me what they figured out that was so helpful was not to start cooking until the guests arrived, because otherwise it just didn't work. So, but once they figured that out, the marriages tended not to end as quickly as they might have otherwise. Jet fighters bombed the palace. We all watched it on TV. the 11th of September, 1973. All across the world, people cried in vain as we heard stories of the students being tortured and slain. Stories of the workers, shop stewards, and the rest being slaughtered at the new dictator's behest. Labor groups condemned it, said we were on the workers' side, including all the engineers of East Kilbride. People organized a boycott of General Pinochet, who had overthrown Allende with a Hawker Hunter jet. Then a few months later, March of '74, Bob Fulton came to work at the Rolls-Royce factory floor. He looked at the orders that had come in that day and found crates with jet engines from Chile. Jet engines from the Air Force across the ocean wide, sent to be repaired in East Kilbride. It didn't take a minute for Fulton and his mates to come to the decision they would not touch these crates. Soon 4,000 Rolls-Royce workers voted, they agreed to stand with the Chileans in their hour of need. Management decried them, the Tories screamed and cussed, but the Hawker Hunter engines were left to sit and rust. Nowhere else on earth were workers qualified to repair the engines sitting there in East Kilbride. It's often hard to know if you've changed anything a whit, but decades later a Chilean general would admit, for a time in Santiago there were no fighters in the sky, because the whole Chilean Air Force had not one jet that could fly. They may not have changed the world, this group of union engineers, but these crates of metal sat corroding for 4 years. So here's to British labor, how for 4 years it tried to do what could be done from East Kilbride. Jet fighters bombed the palace, we all watched it on TV, the 11th of September, 1973. Well, I have been writing a lot of songs since October 7th. I guess I've written about 50. And there's been so many people, it's so encouraging because not only because so many people are listening to them, especially throughout the Middle East, but and elsewhere, but also because so many people are involved with putting the songs out there. I mean, there's people spending like almost working full-time jobs, you know, just to enhance my songs and put them out there in a superior form. People out there who are not musicians may not realize how much effort goes into recording a song well with a band. It's an extremely time-consuming process. People do it. The people who are doing it often love to do it, so you know they don't complain about it or anything. But I know these songs are really sad. The baby is just sensing the feelings in the room, I think. But whatever frequency was bothering the dog is less offensive. I think we eliminated the worst of the treble. On the 25th of February, 2024, in protest against the U.S.-sponsored genocidal war, as bombs were falling and exploding all around, burning up the bodies of the children on the ground, huddling in tents and just waiting to die. This young man could no longer stand to hear the cries. On International Drive in Washington, D.C., a young airman walked up to the Israeli embassy as mothers buried babies who had no milk within, as white phosphorus munitions burned off people's skin, as the troops were firing on those trying to find bread, as the body count was building up to 30,000 dead. Dressed in his fatigues, there on Embassy Row, he announced into the camera this was where he'd meant to go. An act of desperation, and one designed to share the horrors of the crimes being committed over there, like a mirror to the world, so no one could look away from what's happening in Gaza every minute of each day. He stood in front of the building, as ready as he'd get. He put his phone down so he could live stream it on the net. When he lit the fire on the day he chose to die, with no way to stop the slaughter, at least he had to try. As the flames rose up, yellow, red, and blue, did he look up at the cross and wonder what would Jesus do? The Secret Service came to point a gun at Aaron's face. The airman didn't move. He just stood in place. He'd come to make a spectacle. That was understood. If he couldn't stop the war, he'd do what he could. As his body burned before us in an unmistakable sign, again and again he shouted, "Free Palestine!" On the 25th of February, 2024, I wrote this song a little over a year ago, and I expected it to be a song with a very short shelf life because the accusations, the legal case that the U.S. Justice Department is pursuing against the Uhuru movement, against the African People's Socialist Party, is so completely outrageous that I just was thinking, like, they're going to drop the charges. I mean, this is just crazy. But they just apparently decided to sustain the charges. And Noah, is Noah here? That's Noah. If you want to know more about this song, talk to Noah. Over 50 years ago, a bunch of folks agreed it was time to form the African People's Socialist Party. They started doing work they've been doing till today, fighting for justice in the USA. They have members across Africa and elsewhere, and when supporters have contributions to share, they accept donations like lots of groups do. They go to international conferences, it's true. But no one needs the Russians to see that we live in a shambles of a country where your life may be determined by what zip code you live in and by the color of your skin. FBI SWAT teams came armed head to toe, ready to combat some nefarious foe. Not the elderly man they arrested, on what charges no one has attested. Russian influence is all that they'll say. At the FBI's leisure, who knows, they may tell us why they're attacking this organization with SWAT teams across the nation. No one needs the Russians to see that we live in the shambles of a country where your life may be determined by what zip code you live in and by the color of your skin. Who here is unindicted? Who is waiting to be invited to this secret list of those who'll be graced by a cop with a gun at your face? Who here is a co-conspirator? Would you even know if you were? When they come to take your neighbors away, what will you do? What will you say? No one needs the Russians to see that we live in the shambles of a country where your life may be determined by what zip code you live in and by the color of your skin. By the color of your skin. So there's a company called Elbit Systems, and they are based apparently in Massachusetts. I only just learned this. It's a very, very international company. I first heard about them in England, and I toured in England a lot, and it was a full year before I even heard about the activities that a group called Palestine Action is engaged in all across England and Scotland for the past 3 years now. They've been trespassing on the factory floors of Elbit Systems with sledgehammers and smashing everything in sight. There were 10 Elbit Systems factories between England and Scotland. 2 of them have been permanently shut down. They've seriously damaged buildings, equipment, all kinds of stuff. And in some cases, they were smashing away day and night for days before the police arrested them. In one case, the folks who came to my show, which is how I heard about this in the suburbs of Manchester, these folks who came to my show and gave me this T-shirt, they were saying that after the 3 days of nights of smashing everything in sight, finally getting arrested, they were held in a prison or in a jail in Manchester for 15 hours and then let go. And the charges were dropped. And then a couple days later, they got a call from the police asking them, would you like to come to the police station and pick up your climbing equipment? It looks expensive. They had just done $1 million worth of damage to this factory, and the police asked them if they want to pick up their climbing equipment so they could do it again somewhere else. It's fantastic. More recently, they've been getting found guilty, and the proportionality defense it's very inconsistent, it seems, when it gets allowed to be used in Britain. Here it never gets allowed to be used, but there they get to use it sometimes. Also in Ireland and in New Zealand, there are other cases where massive amounts of damage have been done to like a CIA spy base in New Zealand. In Ireland, it was a bunch of US warplanes at Shannon Airport. They smashed stuff, did millions of dollars worth of damage. Nobody went to prison because they were actually upholding New Zealand and Irish law by doing what they were doing. In England, it's the same thing. Under British law, supplying arms and ammunition to a country that is committing war crimes is illegal. So they have real legal. That's why the Crown doesn't want to press the charges most of the time. Recently, they've been finding ways around that, so they're not doing the criminal court thing. I don't know how the terms in England, I don't know if they talk about criminal or civil, but I think the idea is now they're going after them in civil court, so now they're not doing prison sentences, but the most recent group of actionists, as they call themselves, are now in a situation where each one of them is expected to pay £6,000 for the damages done. So it's which is not very encouraging for more future actions. But I wrote Free Assange. I'll do a song about that too, and thank you for the reminder. And speaking of people in prison, that he never gets to use the proportionality defense, right? Why? I'll do a song about him next after this one. Protests were going on. They were going on for years. And then Palestine Action started smashing up the gears. And that's when the people got up off of their seats, took their families into town and blockaded the streets. For 3 days and nights you could hear the hammer swing, though no one knew for sure what the future might bring. They knew one thing for certain: these weapons of war must not be sent to the ports they're heading for. So this is a note to Elbit Systems: you will be shut down when the sledgehammers of justice come to town. After smashing up equipment and smashing a whole bunch, a lot of folks began developing a hunch. The cops took 3 full days to send anyone inside, and after 15 hours they let the charges slide. It seems the prosecutors understood the climb: British companies aiding and abetting war crimes. A factory in Oldham had to close its gate, and the muralists in Palestine said that's smashing great. So this is a note to Elbit Systems: you will be shut down when the sledgehammers of justice come to town. All around the country, hammers being swung, showing civil disobedience is stronger than the tongue. Taking action here so the weapons go nowhere, so they don't get sent to the IOF, 'cause we know what they'll do there. And so does the Prime Minister and the men who he supports, selling weapons to war criminals who don't want to go to court, who don't want to face the facts of what they've done, where the bullets go when they're fired from the guns. So this is a note to Elbit Systems: you will be shut down when the sledgehammers of justice come to town. This is a note to Elbit Systems: you will be shut down when the sledgehammers of justice come to town. When the sledgehammers of justice come to town. Unadikum, 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 unadikum. Julian Assange is an amazing, brilliant man who has done so much for planet Earth and for anybody who is fighting for or believes in the freedom of the press or the freedom of people to know what their governments are doing, and whether their governments are committing war crimes or hopeless corruption or any number of other things. And because of all the great work that Julian Assange has been doing for most of his adult life, he has been vilified and he has been persecuted in ways that are hard for a person to imagine if you don't understand just how extremely corrupt and dishonest the government of this country is, and the government of the United Kingdom. And I would add, with absolute confidence and horror, the government of Sweden as well. And if you don't know about that, then read The Trial of Julian Assange by Nils Meltzer, who was for years the head person on human rights and torture that the United Nations had. You know, he was the dude. And Julian Assange's lawyers kept on sending him materials. Look, this guy is somebody you need to be looking at. And, you know, Nils Meltzer, you know, typical kind of, you know, he's Danish, he's Swedish, Danish-Swedish, and he's looking out for persecution of people in other countries, not England. You know, England's not really on his radar, you know. And they kept on sending him stuff. He's like, oh, no, I heard about this guy. He's a rapist and whatever other horrible things he's done, you know, supposedly. Finally, you know, by his own admission, you know, it took way too long, but finally he got around to reading some of the stuff they were sending him. And then he was just, he went down, started going down a rabbit hole and wrote a great book. But it's you know, So the reality of the situation at this point is, if you want to really understand what is happening, and if you want to really understand the persecution of Julian Assange and all the different nefarious activities that have gone on involving all these different governments, you actually have to read a fairly long book. There's actually no other way, and that is horrifying, because very few people are going to do that. Very few people are going to take the time to read several hundred pages to untangle all this stuff. But it's unfortunately, there's so many other people who are in the same kind of situation as Julian Assange, and I'm one of them. And it's not that I'm in prison or being pursued by the CIA, but you can't do anything in public associated with me unless you sort through a massive deluge of accusations, including stuff that has been written about me that's like tens of thousands of page of words, stuff that looks like it was written by AI actually, but it's this kind of stuff that people feel like they have to slog through if they want to definitively decide for themselves, am I really a fascist or an anti-Semite or a transphobe, or whatever other accusations are being thrown around. Those are the three most popular ones these days. But it's the new reality facilitated by social media platforms. This is all algorithms. This is not that the American people are as crazy as they appear to be. This is that they're communicating on these platforms that have completely taken over our ability to relate to each other, and we are now in the Matrix. If you've seen if you haven't seen the movie The Matrix, not the first one, the only one that really matters, the good one. If you haven't seen the first Matrix movie, you got to see it, because we're living in the Matrix. We are there. We are in the pods. The AI has hooked up to our brains, and they're sucking us out, and we think we're relating to each other, but we're not. We are here in this room, but online it's a fantasy. It's not happening. It's not real. Behind these prison walls, there's a man who's won awards for the work that he has done and all that it affords, such as the knowledge of the horrors committed in our name. They can't stop the message, so the messenger gets blamed. Behind these prison walls, in solitary confinement, in a land of rolling hills and royalty and other such refinement, is someone who is a hero to whistleblowers everywhere, who helped them tell the world of the crimes of Tony Blair. Behind these prison walls, you will find a mortal man. The reason why we know what happened in Afghanistan, when the soldiers of the empire, whose sun set long before, were torturing civilians in their terror war. Behind these prison walls is a part of WikiLeaks, an eloquent orator, but you won't hear him speak. Locked away in silence, one who knows too well how those in power act when there's another war to sell. Behind these prison walls is one who stands accused of exactly what offenses the U.S. has refused to say precisely which, or to try to clear the mist, or to explain how he's not the same as other journalists. Behind these prison walls is a person they deprive of most of the things in life that keep us all alive. A person being tortured as we stand here now for revealing the war crimes. Why, when, where, how? Behind these prison walls, our very right to be informed of what the hell is going on is the teacup in this storm. With knowledge there is power, so the solution by the crown, a 24-hour-a-day indefinite lockdown behind these prison walls. Let's see here. There was somebody posted recently, I can't remember who was it, a well-known Arab American journalist whose name I'm spacing on, but he posted something about how it's just the number of people he talks to who are just so hoping that if they can do anything with their lives, it will involve seeking retribution. He's never seen anything like it, the number of people who are talking like that. And this is, it's just basic physics, you know. There's a song about that. From a different time. Born in Punjab in 1899, from the bottom of the ladder, end of the line. His mother died when he was 3. Soon after came his dad. After that he lost the only brother that he had. When the World War came, he signed up, traveled far. When it was over, he came home to Amritsar. Was serving water to all the people gathered in the garden for the festival. When the soldiers opened fire between the 4 walls filled with thousands of families, 1,000 people killed, he began to organize with others of like mind. Then he knew he had to leave his home behind. Ram Mohammed Singh Azad went across the sea to strike a blow in the cause of liberty. He was called many names, but the one his comrades knew was written on his arm in the form of a tattoo. He spent years in prison, arrested by the crown. The leader of his party by the British was gunned down. From India to Africa, he ventured forth. Finally, he made it to the north. Ram Mohammed Singh Azad went across the sea to strike a blow in the cause of liberty. All the lords of India at Westminster had assembled, including the butcher of Punjab, the governor general. Security was tight, but he managed to hide a revolver in his bag. As he got inside, he pointed his pistol and he aimed it well. As he walked up to the lectern, the governor fell. Ram Mohammed Singh Azad went across the sea to strike a blow in the cause of liberty. Ram Mohammed Singh Azad didn't try to run. He awaited his arrest and was taken off to prison in the year of 1940. The 31st of July, they put a noose around his neck, and in Pentonville he died. Hindus, Sikhs, and Muslims and others gathered round in Punjab, where they laid his ashes in the ground. Ram Mohammed Singh Azad went across the sea to strike a blow in the cause of liberty. Ram Mohammed Singh Azad went across the sea to strike a blow in the cause of liberty. Born in Punjab in 1899. I'll do a couple more for you. I imagine that most people in this room are aware that International Workers' Day is the 1st of May, and it started here in the United States as a commemoration of the folks massacred in Chicago, and the next day in Milwaukee in 1886 during the fight for the 8-hour day and the fight for unions, period, generally. And then it spread around the world, and it became a global day of solidarity between the working class around the world. And then after the Russian Revolution happened, the leadership in the United States pronounced September to be Labor Day, and no longer international, and no longer mentioning workers, and because we couldn't be marching on the same day as the Russians. But most of the world was too smart to go along with that nonsense, and they still celebrate the original May Day that was started in Chicago. 5th month of the year, on the 1st of May, known around the world as International Workers' Day. You'll still see people marching in every corner of the earth. St. John to Santiago, Kerala to Perth, all keeping alive the fantasy what could happen down the line when the workers of the world combine. You can see us gathering early in the morn. Some are celebrating the shackles we have shorn, while so many billions are just waiting for the moment that we might stop losing the class war, when someday we can all say, yeah, we're doing fine. When the workers of the world combine. When that time arrives, maybe it looks like May Day, like a festival that comes home and doesn't go away. Every race and gender, every walk and station, with the working class united, every land and nation. Then just watch what happens when we follow the same sign. When the workers of the world combine. 5th month of the year, on the 1st of May, known around the world as International Workers' Day. Well, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much to everybody, Dean, to Amar, everybody who put this together and who keep this wonderful place going. And thanks to all of you for coming. If you know anybody in Amherst, I'll be playing at UMass Amherst tomorrow evening. It's open to the public. And at davidrovics.com/tour, you can find all the information about all the gigs. But you might have to use a laptop to find like a computer rather than a phone to see all the information if you're there, because that's just weird how it works. But it's all there. And Amherst tomorrow, New Haven on Sunday evening, and then next weekend I'll be playing in Woodstock, New York, Monroe, New York as well. So it's all there. If you know anybody who knows towns, it'd be great to send them on. And Finbar, are you still here? Where's your next gig? And Mr. Dooley's, is that here in town? What night? Well, if you like the music I'm doing, you're going to like what Finbar does. And I met Finbar Doyle about 30 years ago in this town when I was sort of playing at some of the Irish pubs around here, which is there's, last I checked, there's still a great Irish pub music scene here. And, Finbar Doyle is brilliant. You should go if especially if you like beer, or I mean hanging out in pubs. If you don't like beer, hanging out in pubs is kind of boring, even if you like the music. But yeah. So that's what keeps me away from the pubs generally. And yeah, but you should go to and you should see Milan Kohut's brilliant and beautiful artwork. Which has just been violently removed from the walls of his art gallery and dumped in the dumpster behind it. And the man with the red keffiyeh back there and the large beard is somebody that, I'll plan on visiting next week, and you should visit his gallery too and support him against the wackos who are destroying his art, which is beautiful art. I'd never met him in person, but I've seen his work online, and it's fantastic. And thank you. And I'll just close with this song, which is, I don't know if it's a hopeful song, but it's a song about feeling. It's a song about hope. Or maybe it's a song about music. I don't know what it is about exactly. If a song could bring us together across the planet that gave us birth, to act as one, bring peace and justice all around this shattered earth. If a song could take down borders, take down fences, make them fall, liberate all those imprisoned, kept behind the ghetto walls. If a song could stop the bombs, so the next might be the last. If a song could change the future, so it won't be like the past. If a song could be a missile fired from the Iron Dome, if it could protect the children, keep them safe within their homes, if a song could raise an army and transport it on command, take us all to Palestine to defend the Holy Land. If a song could be concrete and put to use to rebuild, if it might turn back the clock, bring back all the babies killed. If a song could be a blueprint, instructions to show us how. If a song could change the world, then let us sing it now. If a song could bring us together across the planet that gave us birth, to act as one, bring peace and justice all around this shattered earth. Thank you very much. Well, usually with a standing ovation, at least 10% of the crowd is like getting ready to go away, and they're like standing up so they could leave, and then they're like, oh shit, he just interpreted that all wrong. So this place, the Community Church of Boston, is such an extremely special place, and that's I mean the work that the Community Church Dean and Amar and everybody has been doing for the past several years, in particular since the pandemic, and taking advantage of the what that had to offer us in its own strange way, and doing all this virtual stuff and getting a huge bigger following all over the world for the wonderful programming they do here with all kinds of speakers and performers. And the place has been going for a very long time. And back in the 80s, when I lived in Boston, I lived here for part of the 90s as well, but in the 80s and 90s, this was a place where, particularly in the 80s, you had the 1930s generation communists, and 1930s, 40s generation, the folks who were at that time back then in their 70s or so, 60s, 70s, and no, I guess 70s, 60s, 70s, yeah, and they were really the backbone of the left around here and across the country. The elderly communists, as I thought of them, the septuagenarian communists. Octogenarian, I know, it's like, right. Now I don't think anything is elderly. I don't even believe in the term anymore. Now that I'm getting there myself. I plan on living forever. This is one of those. There was I'll do a song about a woman, Katharina Jakob. Her husband Franz Jakob and her were both leaders of the resistance in Germany during World War II, and Franz Jakob was executed in September 1944. Katharina Jakob survived the war. Her daughter, one of her daughters, just passed away I think she was around 90 or so, and but her granddaughter, also named Katerina, still very much with us. Katerina Jakob, long before she took that name, was organizing workers in Hamburg just the same. Organizing beneath the flag of deepest red, a new dawn of peace and freedom clearly shining in her head. Katerina Jakob first was sent to jail when the trappings of democracy all began to fail. She was frequently arrested in and out of custody while her first husband was in hiding from the Nazis. Katerina Jakob was acquitted of a crime, but the Gestapo had the last word. They weren't finished with her this time. She was sent to Ravensbrück, a killing hunger at her side. She heard of the execution, how her second husband died. For Katerina Jakob, the end was close at hand. She was on a death march with a ragged, starving band, marching through a forest, being led by the SS. What would happen hours later seemed impossible to guess. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. They all sang the Internationale. Katerina Jakob thought about her children and the friends and comrades taking care of them, not knowing yet if any of them survived, not knowing that soon she'd see her daughters both alive. Katerina Jakob watched the German soldiers fleeing, streaming from the east, that's what she was seeing. Allied bombers flew above them, she thought they all might die, and then soon there was the silence of all the SS men. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. They all sang the Internationale. Katerina Jakob saw red flags flapping in the breeze above the Russian tanks, and she fell upon her knees. And so many different voices in so many different tongues sang the most beautiful song that could ever have been sung. In German, Lithuanian, in Polish, and in Dutch, a myriad of melodies as never had been such. In Russian and in Yiddish, Italian and French, emerging from the forest beneath the trench. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. They all sang the Internationale. Völker hört die Signale auf zum letzten Gefecht. Die Internationale erkämpft das Menschenrecht. Völker hört die Signale auf zum letzten Gefecht. Die Internationale erkämpft das Menschenrecht.
David Rovics, thank you for gracing our humble stage. All of you, thank you for being here tonight. We have a mailing list. We'd be more than happy to be in touch with you and let you know about upcoming events. If you'd like to stack a few chairs as you go out and prepare for our next event, which is this Sunday. It's a speaker named Audrey Schulman, who works with a group called HEAT, H-E-E-T, who does remarkable work on climate change mitigation and worked with us a lot on this very building that you're enjoying right now. Thank you, David Rovics, and join our mailing list. Take care, everybody. And thank you for all the people who brought their kids.